We're live.
We're live.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome, everyone. This is the Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee on Friday afternoon, April 4th, 2025. We are here to hear about the Municipal Energy Resilience Program. And as is our custom, we will go around the room, introduce ourselves, and then we'll hear from our presenters. I'm Scott Campbell. I'm Vice Chair. The Chair, Catherine Jennings, is out today. I am from St. Johnsbury, Calgary, Essex District.
Richard Bailey, from 102. Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington, Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Dara Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Kleffner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Morris Millian, Wyndham 2.
Jack Locker, Committee Assistant.
And we have in the room with us.
Yes, Brian Sewell, State Energy Program Manager with Buildings and General Services.
Hi, I'm Emily Kosicki. I'm Deputy Commissioner for Buildings and General Services.
I'm Cole Barney, the Communications Coordinator for BGS.
Okay, perfect. I guess, Brian, you want to go ahead and give us lovely, go through this lovely handout with us. And are you equipped to share it? And we have
Yes, there's a Zoom link that I can connect to.
Okay. The folks at home.
Are you supposed to get Oh, we're just really lucky that we doing my bird on. It's gonna rain more snow.
Well, it looks like it's not connecting through. So in order to get started, not fiddle too much with the technology, everybody looks like they have a copy of the slides. Once again, for the record, my name is Brian Sewell, State Energy Program Manager with Department of Buildings and General Services, managing the SEMP, the State Energy Management Program, and the MERP, Municipal Energy Resilience Program. If there's ever an acronym that I use, please feel free to stop me. It happens every once in a while. I want to make sure I'm being clear and keeping everybody in the loop. So on the first interior page, we talk about the establishment of the program. So Act 172 became law in 2022. It allocated two different components of the program. The first being the grant program with $45 million coming from the ARPA State Fiscal Recovery. There was also funding set aside from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act for a municipal loan program at a later date. Key thing to note, and it's why it's on the slide, in October, we were designated revenue loss replacement. That was critical because it allowed the funds to act as state dollars instead of being tied to the federal restrictions under the ARPA State Fiscal Recovery.
Both these funds, both these sets of funds?
Just the ARPA grant funds. The IIJA does still have their own Department of Energy federal funding requirements. But for the grant portion, we were given revenue loss replacement.
Okay, great.
On the next slide, I just break down the components of that $45 million. Oh, great. Perfect. Thank you. So the first phase was funding and $2.4 million out to the regional planning commissions. This is important because BGS has never worked with municipalities at this scale before. And so having that local partnership really was a key piece of making this successful. The second portion was the first direct disbursement to municipalities. We carved out just over $1 million so that we could have a non-competitive grant that allowed any town that wanted to apply for up to $4,000. And those funds were pretty flexible. The third phase and the first real big chunk out to the towns was the assessment phase. So in order to know what measures we were going to later fund, we wanted to conduct these assessments across municipalities in order to find out, do they need lights, do they need insulation, so on and so forth. And then the fourth and the largest chunk of funding was almost $36 million. And that was for implementing the measures that were uncovered during the audit process. And that includes everything from your lighting insulation up through the resilience measures like solar and battery storage. Just briefly on the loan program, in the bill, it does allocate 2.8. I'm just noting here that for the record, the award that was given back from the Department of Energy was reduced based on the state's population and a few other factors. So the total amount now is 1.2 that we're working on standing up for a loan program.
Oh.
Yes.
No, I'm just, that's a big cut.
So then on the next slide, we have a copy of the or title page of the Efficiency Vermont Energy Burden Report from 2019. That was listed specifically in the law as the #1 priority for ranking and scoring the municipalities. It's worth noting that while the Energy Burden Report really focuses on household energy burden, so your proportion of income to spending on electricity and heating, because so many of these rural municipalities have infrastructure that's providing critical services through COVID specifically, we know that access to Wi-Fi was a really big thing. And sometimes the town community center or town hall is one of the only reliable places to get it. So by upgrading these pieces of infrastructure, you're helping to provide essential services to a population that we know is facing significant energy burden. Just briefly wanted to walk through the timeline because a lot has happened in the last 2.5, almost 3 years. So we go from launching the program in June, spending the summer really focused on trying to figure out how to make this work with COVID focused funding from ARPA. And then after revenue loss replacement, we swung back towards designing the type of energy resilience program that we really, were required to do under the bill. Unfortunately, right as we were about to launch the first phase of assessments, July 2023 flooding hits, and it really impacts a lot of the communities that we're working with in the program. It impacted the state, obviously, which was not great. And then to see that again on the next slide, July of the following year, right as we're standing up the implementation program. So there were a lot of factors in terms of making this program successful, a couple of key events that we had to work around. But ultimately, the success here is that by December of 2024, we were required to obligate all of the dollars that included the 36 million of projects, and we obligated every penny to a town. The last date that's noted there is 2026, so just under 2 years from now. That's because that is the final date that still falls under the ARPA rules that this program has to abide by. Even though it's revenue loss replacement, we're still hitting these ARPA obligation and spend dates. So the 2026 is the date where we have to spend out the last of the funds.
Is there any danger of this money being clawed back?
Of being clawed back by the
feds?
I have been told not at this point because they were designated revenue loss replacement. We can certainly all talk with the commissioner's office and make sure that that is still the case. But what I've been told is they're safe.
Great. Okay, question?
No, I would just add that we have investigated that. We've had conversations with the chief recovery office, to ensure that these funds are not at risk. And the guidance we're getting is that they're not, partially because they are obligated. Right. So at this time, we're not seeing a risk. But if we become aware of one, we'll share that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Question?
I just want to note that I'm hearing you say if you become aware of that, you will share that with us with this committee.
Yes.
That's great.
Question?
Can we get a list of the towns and the amount of grants they got?
Yes, so I will make a note to send the full list. I do actually have a list of projects by member districts for this committee, if that would be helpful as well. I can leave that with you.
That'd be great. Thanks.
So on the next slide, we talk about the partnerships that were essential in making this program successful. Once again, RPCs first and foremost because of their long-term relationship with their communities. We also were partnered with Efficiency Vermont for their technical support and expertise, and the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, again, because of their ability to provide guidance and their extensive experience working with the communities. And then during the course of the program, we also received outreach and education support from the Vermont Energy and Climate Action Network, or VCAN. They hosted some webinars for us. They brought in a broader audience. All of that kind of helped bundle the outreach work together and make it successful.
Just noting that VCAN coordinates municipal energy committees,
Yes.
if towns have them.
And I have a question about the energy audits or energy assessments. How did you go about getting those done? Was that a contract, a single contract, or series of contracts? Who did that work?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So we did go out to bid. We got 4 vendors on contract with the state. And why that was critical, we can jump ahead if you would like to. Here, go to slide 11, which starts the energy assessment, so that we're all talking about the same thing. So putting 4 vendors under contract was really critical. Efficiency Vermont lent a tremendous amount of support to helping review those RFPs, bring those vendors under contract. And then we had to spend some time getting these 4 competitors really to work on the same program, agree to the same terms and type rights, so that towns are essentially getting as close to the same thing as we possibly can. And I think that worked well. We did end up adding 2 extra vendors into the program in the spring of 2024 just to meet the workload. Even with 4, we were still trying to catch up on timeline. We had so much interest in the program. Over 237 applications totaling 665 municipal buildings. I think there's only about 2,000 municipally owned buildings in the state. So it was a big chunk of that infrastructure. 531 assessments were awarded and completed out of the 665 buildings. So if we look on page 12, you'll see the 2 different types of assessments. The reason we did this is a standard level 2 commercial grade audit, which is what our standard contract goes out to bid for, is difficult for some of these under-resourced municipalities because it requires historic utility bill information. It requires building drawings, and some of them couldn't provide it. Others had literally had it washed away in the flooding from the prior summer, and they said, we just can't produce it. So we did have a level 1 assessment, which meant you did not need to provide all that extra documentation, and it would allow you to apply for the grant side of the program, but you would be foregoing any ability to apply for a loan later on, because the loans are tied to the payback of the measures. And if we don't have your utility bill history, we don't know how to benchmark the savings.
Right.
So then on page 13, we show the level of assessment. So 201 level 1 assessments, 330 level 2 across the state. We love our map. So we have a nice map with all the bubbles showing assessments across Vermont. And then there's an infographic which shows just how the assessments were deployed. So a key piece of the program was BGS going out to contract, getting the vendors, working directly with the vendors, paying the vendors directly so that towns didn't have to go out to reimbursement. The feedback we received was that that was a big reason why so many applied, because it was taking some of that burden off the municipal shoulders of having to go do this all themselves. Then the RPCs were critical because once we had the application in, we knew what level they were looking for, how many and where. We could work with the vendors that we had on contract and the RPC territories to set a schedule that would allow us to stay on track. And in the course of a year, we audited 531 buildings, averaged over 40 audits a day. And that's through winter storms, people calling out sick. And we only had 1 case where a vendor showed up to a building and no one was there to let them in. So that's a huge success rate in terms of the way this was designed to make sure that we could get through the volume and move on to the implementation phase.
Yeah, I'll say, I used to run a program like this, and That's a lot of money.
It's a lot, yes. So then I just have a couple of slides with pictures that we got during the audit process. It shows some of the insulation and air sealing challenges. On the next one, we have ventilation, heating systems. For the legislation, fuel switching was a big component. So there was a lot of examinations of these municipal heating systems. So a lot of oil, propane, coal, in some cases, and all of that are price volatile fuels that leave, these rural municipalities that are high energy burden open to pretty wild price fluctuations over time.
Yes.
As part of the audit, did you capture the type and age of the equipment?
Yes. So throughout
That all exists in like a form that like the Energy Committee can tap into, or
we could pull that information together into a database. Right now, it would be documented in each town's individual reports.
but you would be able to pull that.
Yes, we would need some time, but we could pull all that information from the different nameplates on all of the equipment that we surveyed.
That's good data for that many buildings.
Yes. So to my knowledge, I'm not aware of another state program that has run a survey of municipal infrastructure at this level. So we hope to be able to continue to dig into all the little pieces and know as much as we can.
So that's interesting here. I just follow up on Derek's question about the data. So you have it in individual reports, but you didn't accumulate it into a database along the way. Is that what you're saying?
We are doing that right now. So we are.
That is, and what you're part of your, what you're.
Yes.
Okay, because that seems like that would be really, really important to have it in the database.
And the system we use, Mr. Vice Chair, is the GRIT system through Sustainable Endowments, and it's the Green Revolving Investment Tracking System.
Oh.
It's the same one the state uses for our state buildings. We purchased a new license when this program was getting started so that we could enter all of the fuel, electric, and other information from all of the municipal buildings.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah, staying right on this line, so who has access to that information right now?
In that database?
Yeah,
Just our office.
just BGS,
Yes.
so not the RPCs or the LCT.
Correct.
Okay, so, I mean, I think you're hearing interest, but I mean, it seems like there would be tremendous value in not selling that information. With us, I mean, I was going, my original question was, have you all had time yet to do any kind of an after action on all of this? Because this was quite an undertaking with a lot of partners, huge scale. And it seems that there has to be some really big learnings. I don't think we asked for a report of any kind.
There was an annual report submitted in January
Okay.
for the program.
I know.
And we can make a note to send that.
But does it
follow up
have
as well.
learnings in it? Or recommendations or?
To my knowledge, I don't believe we included a lessons learned section yet because we were still processing. And actually right now we're still going through scope amendment changes. As these towns go through their historic review process, they're starting to go out to bid. They're coming back with, well, we ran into this issue. Could we change the way the scope is written? And we've been going through that town by town because, again, I think the goal of the program is really to meet them where they're at. That was a big part of the feedback during the legislative process, was not creating another program that would be out of reach for these towns. And so that flexibility to continue to work with them, they know what they need, and now we've seen what they need. And so we're going through that process.
I do, thinking about your partners, all of the work that was done with the communities. I mean, like getting you all together for an hour or two, even, like what did we learn? What can we leverage? Feels like it could be just so enormously valuable. You have energy committees, the RBCs, the LCT, yourselves, all of these audits. And not everything came to fruition, right? So there's things that are out there hanging, is there anything to do with those? So, and hearing that you're still in the process of trying to make this all happen. So that would be really, I think, useful.
Yes, I think part of the reason why we haven't had a chance to go into that yet is we're now working on the process of getting the loan program
Right.
stood up. That's our next immediate goal.
Yeah, you're still in the process. You have a lot of these, probably most of these things haven't gone to construction, so.
Correct. And actually, if we go to page or slide, see, moving to implementation on page 19, there's just two maps that show the communities that were awarded. Just because I want to get the facts out there. It was 126 municipalities were awarded, and that equals 246 buildings. So there's this overall funnel, right, of you get this many doing the mini grants, 175, then building audits, and then down to the project dollars. So the average award was just under 285,000, which is about an average of $146 per building. And we saw buildings of all types. 80% of them, though, were under 10,000 square feet. That's not a huge surprise for the municipalities.
Sorry. Go ahead. And then I have a question.
How many garages are we doing here?
100 garages. Yeah, town garages have been something I have learned a lot about that I did not know that much about beforehand. It's very hard to do a blower door test for air leakage on a lot of these garages. So
Yeah. Can't reach 50, can't reach 10. This database, what was the name of the database again?
it's the Green Revolving Investment Tracking System, or GRITS.
And that's not correct. Does this allow you to compare building types to establish sort of baseline of efficiency or energy usage and by building type and see which buildings are sort of way out of line?
I can ask our account rep if that's something they can help us provide. For that information, we use Energy Star Portfolio Manager to get the energy use intensity,
okay, right,
and then have that for building type.
That's what I'm asking. Okay, so you do use for portfolio manager
For the state program. If it was something that we thought there was funding to take care of, I think that would be a different type of project to kind of pull all of that into Portfolio Manager for the towns. Part of it is some of the towns have accounts already, some don't. But I think there's opportunities to talk about what that could look like.
Okay. I forgot the other question. So go ahead. Did you have another question? Okay.
So 126 awardees, 246 buildings, all 36 million obligated. There's a slide on 20 about the scoring criteria. Essentially, it's what was outlined in the bill: energy burden, administrative report, geographic location. So making sure the funds really made it to every corner of the state, population, and then we added scope of work. Because part of the importance of this program was not running into the same issue that other programs had in the past of just getting the electrified equipment in, like heat pumps, but then not air sealing and insulating the building. And then 2 years in, the heat pump fails because its motor's burning out. It's trying to keep up with a building that's not prepared to take that equipment. So we scored based on, did they apply for the measures in right order? And then as we went down, we awarded starting with the basics, working our way down towards the resilience measures. And if there was funding left at the 500,000 cap that each town was held to for their application, then we could layer in those other components.
I remember my other question.
Yeah.
Did you include in the sort of program funding and outline what you plan to do, looking at energy use after work is done, after the installation of these measures?
So in the agreement,
This would be 2028 perhaps, or 2029, after a few seasons of usage.
perfect. Yes. Thank you, Vice Chair. So there is a stipulation in the grant agreement that they all had to sign saying that they would provide at least starting 1 year after the measure installation was completed, information on their energy use at that facility, so we could get a sense of, did this work?
Okay, great. Okay. It's, by the way, hard to figure that out. I can tell you, I'm trying to do it.
And so I think that will also require continued, outreach and education efforts. What we learned through the program was every town meeting day, you got to set up another round of webinars because there's new people who need to be brought up. What did I get? What was this thing?
Yeah.
The mini grant? Where is it going?
Yeah.
And making sure that they all stay on track and understand to meet those obligation timelines.
Yeah, great.
So, so here it is. Okay, so on slide 21.
Sorry, we have one more question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So were towns that were flooded priority towns, or was it equal across the state?
Yeah, we did not award any priority score to flood impacted communities. In a couple of cases, there were buildings that had scheduled assessments that had to come off the list because they were red tagged. So unfortunately, there was not an opportunity to layer in flood impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if there's towns in my district to get done, can we get the individual reports? Copies of the individual?
Oh, copies of the assessment reports?
Yeah.
Those I think are free for the town to share. And we, I think with their permission, are able to share out as well. Although we paid for them, so I think that we have that ability.
Okay.
Yeah. So on the measures, I mentioned the layering effect. So starting with envelope down to equipment electrification and fuel switching, and then resilience. The reason why I highlighted those two rows is because that's a mark of people doing the right thing, right? Making sure that if you're applying for heat pumps, you're also applying for thermal envelope improvements. And we did see people pretty much follow the guidance. But there's also a fair amount of resilience measures included. 56 battery backup systems, charging stations, solar. We have a lot of conversions to more high efficient equipment, even some geothermal systems. So this is great. I think it shows the evidence of the program working as designed. So then on our next slide, and this is here, we're getting towards the end. I just wanted to throw in a couple of clips of the buildings that we were working on, and a nice quote from Irisburg that they mentioned they received a MERP award that spans 4 essential community buildings. In particular, the MERP funds will fill a critical gap in an essential health and safety renovation to our town, garage and fire station that otherwise would have raised taxes on our small community. Thank you. And that's just a small part of the feedback that we've gotten from the awardees, and it's really appreciated. On the next slide, again, just highlighting impact. This is Plainfield. We had Bob from Plainfield present at the conference with us this week. He included these images from the July 2024 flooding. It's just evidence of the importance of the resilience component of the work, making sure that these towns have infrastructure that is prepared to weather the storms that we know are coming. And he mentioned in their implementation grant that Plainfield is using the funding from the grant to weatherize, maximize HVAC efficiency in their 5 municipal buildings that were awarded in order to cut overall taxpayer expenses. And they were able to get awards to add additional solar as part of the system. So for a lot of these communities, they are able to take the savings, pass them on to taxpayers and residents. They're also able to use it in other ways to help fill in, right? So part of this is we're not just funding good work, it's funding measures that are going to help them save in their operational costs.
Yep.
And then the last slide is just the process that they're in right now. So they're going through their historic review. They have until July 1st to get through that. I'm sure we'll need to grant some extensions, and historic preservation has been very flexible in working with the communities. They have made it very clear they understand the intent of the work in a tight timeline, right? We have to get all the funds spent out by the end of December 2026. And we have a few check-in points built in along the way to keep tabs on projects and make sure that they're hitting those targets. And really, that is all I have for you this afternoon.
Great. Well, I have to tell you also that I was on the Corrections and Institutions Committee in 2022. We got the bill out. So this is it's really getting done. It's great. And are you the manager of the program?
Yes.
For PGS? Yeah, it's cool. Okay. Would you like to add anything else?
No, I just want to compliment Brian and his team. I am new to BGF in December, and I'm just so impressed with all of their work, and they're very dedicated and very diligent in moving things forward. So
Great.
great
Thank
job.
you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I really want to add to that. You guys, BGS had not done this, and Brian, you're still in it. It's not done yet.
Correct.
I mean, I know you have really had a lot of, problems to solve with a new program and a lot of partners, a lot of needs. And this is really, really important project and a huge opportunity for our communities. And I really want to second, you've done an incredible job. BGS has far surpassed my expectations. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And let's have that action.
Yes.
Even though you're still in the middle of action, before we lose people, like you don't want to lose the learnings from the communities either. Like, would you task that to the RPCs maybe or something?
Yeah.
But I would add that success of this program isn't just measured in by how much less energy a municipal building uses. It's also measured by how well that building functions during the next disaster to support its community. And if they can keep the lights on, they can keep their telecoms up from that one building, when the rest of the town doesn't have it. That's another big measure of success in my view.
Yeah, thank you for raising that point. And part of our interagency discussions have included Department of Health, Jared Ulmer. I know they're working on a cooling site map for the state. And so we've been in discussions with them. They know the sites that are being awarded heat pumps so that they can try and use that information to help advance their understanding of where some of these future cooling sites might be across the state and get that word out to local residents. Because we know we're going to have more heat emergencies going forward.
Yeah, it's hard to think of anything bad to say about this. This is just great. So,
Thank you.
and I will also say that having been involved in getting a program out of the ground, 3D Thermal is where I worked for a while, which works on affordable apartment housing. It takes time and it's a big lift. So well done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And, our rural communities and our poorer communities in particular have so much work to do to adapt to changing climate, energy, all of that. And, this model, while we may not have, those types of grant funds, again, at Rural Caucus, which I am also on, is looking at this project and we're thinking about, how are our communities going to adapt to, maybe there's now a school building that isn't, so this kind of state, regional, local work, right? Really impressive and important. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Boy, that's the most love I think anybody's got.
Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Guess we are all done for the day. We can adjourn.